What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I'm Marcus Whitman, and we got a full show today, lots of Week 3 reactions. I did decide to upload this episode to YouTube, so if you are watching this on YouTube, a reminder, you can get this podcast every Monday on your podcast services, whether that's Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, you name it. I did just decide to upload this one to YouTube because I think it's going to be a good show, and I just want to promote the podcast. So once you are listening to that podcast, make sure you're leaving 5-star reviews. Really helps me out, really helps grow the podcast. Also, just a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, to hit that like button. It really does help, share the video and grow my content more than you can honestly even imagine just for hitting that like button. So please do consider that little thumbs up button. Last little thing, if you're shopping for tickets, maybe your team's doing well, you want to go to a game, or your baseball team's making a late season push here. If you're buying tickets, first off, do it on SeatGeek, and then use promo code FranchiseGuy. That's promo code FranchiseGuy. You will save $20 on your first purchase. You'll help me out, support the show, support the channel in the process. So it's really a win-win situation. You're going to get the best prices there anyway, so definitely check that out. All right, so full show today. Like I said, I got a couple of little storylines I want to hit on before I go through the games like I do on every Monday show. And then I am going to try and open up the mailbag a little bit at the end. Now, when you're listening to this, Monday Night Football will have already undergone its course. Redskins, Bears. I'm going to stay away from my takes for that one because by the time this is up, the game will have already started. So I do think the Bears are going to win. Could be a little scrappy if the Redskins found a way to pull it out. I think it would take a defensive or special teams touchdown, but never know. So my notes for the show. Antonio Brown, I'm going to spend 15 seconds. I'm done. I've muted Antonio Brown on Twitter. I literally don't care anymore. I have no opinion on if he plays again this year because we really just don't know. I like to focus on things football, and anything Antonio Brown related at this point is 99% off-field just BS. I don't know what's going on with him. If he is mentally ill, he needs help, and that's really unfortunate, but I just don't really care at this point. And then the other thing is a college football note, a lot of draft questions, particularly with the quarterbacks. A lot of you guys come over from my mock drafts and my draft content and stuff, so I do want to say that Jake Fromm has looked real good this year. He is my number one quarterback at the moment, and to be honest, with how Trevor Lawrence is playing right now, who won't be eligible till next season, there's not a huge line for me between Jake Fromm and Trevor Lawrence. Fromm, to me, is composed. He doesn't have a cannon arm. He's not overly mobile. Most importantly, he doesn't put up the production because Georgia, if they could pass the ball 8 times a game and win, they would do it. They want to run the ball. In this game against Notre Dame, they had to rely on Jake Fromm a little bit. It was a contested game early, and Fromm made all of the throws. He had a play that I tweeted about, 3rd and 3, big play in that game. He rolled out and threw just a dime to the corner of the end zone, a big-time throw, types of throws that you see the elite quarterbacks in the NFL make. I think a decent comparison for him actually is Jimmy Garoppolo, who also, by happenstance, is on an NFL team that also would prefer to just pass the ball 12 times a game and win that way and run I formation all game. So I do think Fromm's stock is up. Tua, for me, I also happen to tweet this week that I think Tua is potentially going to be a large draft bust. Now, he's got a lot of time to change my opinion on that, but he doesn't have the arm. He pretty much has the best scenario around him that any quarterback could ever ask for. He's got an elite defense. If he makes a mistake, it's not going to hurt him. He's got receivers running wide open, elite offensive line. He has a very easy job. Also, he's a lefty. And that might not sound like much, but I think it does say something that there are currently no lefties in the NFL. It changes the verbiage. It changes the timing of read options and RPOs. When you pick up a free agent, you can't just plug him in there. He's going to have to take a little time to get used to it. So it's just another thing working against Tua. People have also brought up how the spiral spins the other direction. It can throw receivers off. There's just one more thing working against Tua. So I'm kind of in on Jake Fromm right now as QB1. And if he continues to play like he did against Notre Dame on Saturday night, I do think I'm going to plant my flag as him as the guy that should be the number 1 overall pick in this draft, potentially to the Miami Dolphins. So let's get into the games from Sunday. I'm going to try to get through them relatively quickly, so I do have time to get to the mailbag. I want to keep the show around an hour. So I'm going to start with the game that everyone wants to hear about, Baltimore at Kansas City. Just a couple hours before this recording, finished rewatching this game. And, Lamar Jackson's been the hot topic, especially around this podcast and on my YouTube channel. I just was not high on Lamar Jackson entering this season. I've also shown that I didn't hate Lamar Jackson coming out of the draft. I had him higher than Baker. I had, at a time, mocked him in the top 10. I have nothing against Lamar Jackson. I just react to what I see. And no matter how you slice it, he was not a good quarterback as a rookie. Yeah, he won all his games, but he was the most inaccurate starter in the entire NFL. And history tells us that fixing accuracy is something that very rarely, if not ever, happens. And this year, he's been a lot more accurate, and I've given him a lot of credit for the first 2 weeks. But I also think that overreaction theater has just completely run its course here, even after this game. He has played great, but he's not the MVP. The Ravens are not a lock for the AFC Championship. All this crazy hype coming off of 2 weeks, it's that's just very unrealistic. You can't just ignore how he played last year. He still has a long way to go before he's any kind of, to me, even average starter, let alone some elite MVP candidate. So how did he look this week? We get new information every week. We react. I'm giving you my honest reaction. If he came out and honestly lit it up, was hitting all his throws, looked great in the pocket, gave his team a legitimate chance to win that game, I would give him credit for it. I watched the tape. That is not what I saw. I saw a quarterback who looked very gimmicky. Gimmicky is not the word I wanted to use there. That would imply that they were running trick plays and stuff. That's not the truth. I think I meant to say fidgety. He didn't look particularly comfortable in the pocket. He was improvising way too soon. He was playing off rhythm. His accuracy wasn't bad, and I'll give him credit again. He wasn't particularly inaccurate in this game. He missed some throws, but not at any kind of rate that is alarming. I'm still higher on him now than I was heading into the season, surely simply because, I think I was wrong about how truly inaccurate he is. And the analytics support that he's been a much more accurate quarterback this year. But it's not just accuracy with Lamar Jackson. There's a lot going on. There's also decision making. We've railed Marcus Mariota over the last 2 years because he has this great mobility, but when and how does he use it? Does he stand in the pocket and throw a strike? Does he scramble too much? Now, I think Lamar kind of goes the other way. He doesn't hang in the pocket long enough, tries to do a little bit too much with his feet. There was times at this game where he reminded me a lot of Mitchell Trubisky, where he'll make that quick read. If it's not there, he wants to run and pick up the first down with his legs. And that's fine. He'll get away with it sometimes, but when you want to talk about a guy that can be an MVP candidate, that can take on the Patriots or this Chiefs team in the playoffs, which that's what I'm looking for in a quarterback. I'm not looking for a guy that can blow out a college team in Miami or a Cardinals team that Kyle Allen just threw for 400 yards against. That just doesn't do a whole lot for me. I want a quarterback that can not make big mistakes and hang with the big boys and win me a championship. So that's the level I'm evaluating Lamar Jackson on. Not can he execute an offense when it's all in front of him and hang in a pocket, eat a sandwich, and throw a 50-yard deep ball, because most quarterbacks in the NFL can do that. So in this game, in my honest opinion, if it weren't for Mark Ingram looking like an absolute boss and two just absolute, I'm putting this one on YouTube, so I got to be careful with my language, but two just absolute F-it throws in the fourth quarter. One was on fourth down. He was about to get sacked and literally just threw it straight in the air. Seth Roberts with a push-off that did not get called. Andy Reid actually challenged it, did not win the challenge. And Seth Roberts comes down with the ball. Big play. They end up going and score on that. And then later in the fourth quarter, they're getting blown out, by the way. They were not even close to winning this game. couple big runs. They get in towards the red zone and 3rd and long. He is rolling out to the right and just heaves it into double or triple coverage to the other side of the ball. And somehow, I think it was Willie Snead just magically came down with the football. 2 highlight plays that you're going to look at on ESPN and NFL Network, and their narrative, as far as I've seen it, is that he played good enough to provide hope and that he went punch for punch with Lamar Jackson. And I saw Bleacher Report post the post-game handshake between him and Patrick Mahomes, and it's like, see you in the AFC Championship? No, I'm not even going close to that. If it weren't for how big of a mess the AFC North is, Baltimore would not be playoff bound, in my opinion. They've got a lot of issues with that offense. You're not going to be able to run the ball like that consistently every week. And yeah, Lamar brings a lot to the table as a running threat, but as a pocket passing quarterback, a guy that I trust to, convert big third downs and deliver a good read and a good strike, he's not there right now. He's a very exciting quarterback, and any given week can be unstoppable. It's almost like the Cam Newton effect, although I don't think Lamar is nearly at Cam Newton's level of reading defenses and making good decisions. But it's almost like that thing where you could get a top 10 quarterback that week, or you could get just a snoozer. And honestly, the box score didn't look bad. They actually covered in this game. Again, thanks to some just lucky plays. And you're going to accuse me of being a hater because I say those were lucky plays. I don't even really care at this point. You can't argue that the 2 big completions he had in the 4th quarter of that game, really the only 2 that weren't screenplays, were just pure luck. So, it's very much wait and see with Lamar Jackson. I think the hype is off the rails. It was last week too, and I thought Arizona was much closer. I thought they had the better quarterback in that game. Thought it was a lock for them to cover the 13-point spread, and they did. So we'll see on Baltimore. They're 2-1. I'm not going to labor on this all day, but I don't think Lamar had a good day, and the media is going to spin it the other way. Someone that did have a very good day for the Ravens was Mark Ingram, who was incredible in this game. There's a few running backs playing at an elite level, like some of the best running back play of the last few years. You got Mark Ingram in here. Dalvin Cook for the Vikings been awesome. Alvin Kamara, big reason they were able to go into Seattle and win. But that was one of the best signings of the offseason. He has allowed this team to really do what they want to do and be a run-first team there in Baltimore. And then on the Kansas City side of the ball, they were Kansas City. Their defense stinks. We've known that. Mahomes made some amazing throws in this game. But at the same time, people think I hate on Mahomes whenever I say anything bad about the guy. Like, he's just this perfect, flawless player. He is not. He makes a ton of just F-it throws, and he gets away with it a lot of times, but Baltimore was creeping back in this game, and twice on one drive, Patrick Mahomes should have been intercepted. And it went the other way twice. I think there was a roughing call that called one of them back, and then a defensive pass interference on the other. But if those interceptions stand, and I don't know if it was that drive or the next one where a screenplay went like 50 yards, who knows how that game would have resulted. It's the same thing with the AFC Championship game. He made a lot of big mistakes. He made a lot of big plays, but a lot of big mistakes that let Tom Brady get back in that game and ultimately win. So, I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I think Mahomes is a top 3 quarterback right now. I don't hate Patrick Mahomes. I think people are so afraid to give any criticism of the guy because he is just the love child of the NFL right now. And when I see something on tape that concerns me, I'm going to say it. And if people think I'm a hater of Mahomes, then so be it. A lot of that has reflected with Baker right now. I thought that he made a lot of aggressive decisions that resulted in almost luck last year, and we're seeing that come back the other way this year. Now, Mahomes is a much better player. He can get away with a lot more stuff, and he's just ridiculous. Like, at the end of the day, if you make enough big plays, it's not going to matter, but when you have to go against a Tom Brady or other elite teams, those are the kind of mistakes that can cost you. It's a big reason that Brett Favre had really a hard time winning another championship. He threw that just devastating interception against the Giants in a year that the Packers could have won the Super Bowl. Brett Favre being the best comparison for Patrick Mahomes. So, I'm not trying to shred Mahomes. He's amazing. And he's almost a lock to win MVP at this point. But I do think people are just afraid to give any criticism of the guy. He's also missed a lot of throws this year. He's missed a lot of throws, which you might expect for a guy that throws deep that often. But, I just think people are afraid to criticize him, and I'm gonna offer those criticisms. So the next game here is the Giants at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of people waiting for my Daniel Jones reactions. I was with almost, 95% of analysts out there that thought that Daniel Jones was not worth the 6th overall pick, and as of this date, I'm not going to back off that take. Was he good in this game? Yes. Was he playing a Bucs defense that heading into the year I thought was at best the second worst defense in the NFL? Yeah. The Bucs defense has played good to this point. I'll give Daniel Jones credit. He looks competent. He looks almost like my pro comparison for him, Ryan Tannehill. He made some throws in this game. He also had moments where he looked like a rookie, looked like a guy that, Jared Goff-esque in the pocket, I might say, like just kind of eyes downfield, not sensing pressure. The fumbles definitely concern. Kirk Cousins, maybe another comparison for that. Just was a concern in college. In the preseason, he showed it. Now in his first game, like a guy that just doesn't necessarily handle pressure all that well. Now there were some plays late in the game where he did start running a little more, and that is an asset of his game, is he is very fast. So hats off, he played well. We've seen Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota. Hell, this week we saw Kyle Allen have great games against poor defenses. But I'm not going to shred him either. He looked competent, definitely better than Eli Manning. That's really all I'm going to say about Daniel Jones at this point. It's one game. He looked good. You have a reason to be excited, Giants fans. It's a continuation of what we were saying from the preseason. The other thing is Evan Ingram in this game was unstoppable. He had to have over 100 yards, was just coming wide open on these streak routes, run after catch ability, made a great one-handed catch. Just a beast. Was probably the best player on the field on Sunday in this game. And then as far as the Bucs are concerned, the Bucs were the Bucs. Explosive offensive plays, a little sloppy at times, poor defense as we kind of expected heading into the year. Some of these young defensive backs showed some of those colors of being young in this game. This was a game that if you wanted to buy into Tampa Bay as a team that has a chance to capitalize on the Drew Brees injury, the fact that Atlanta looks like garbage right now, that division entering this week a little bit up for grabs, you got to beat the Giants at home, Bruce Arians. It's that simple, and they didn't. So with that loss, I'm out on the Bucs as any kind of playoff contender, especially with the Saints winning this week. Next game, Tennessee at Jacksonville. Pretty big snoozer, but I do have a lot of takeaways from that game. I'm 2 for 2 now on making my film breakdowns on Thursday. First, it was Cam Newton, kind of pointing out that he can't accurately throw a football. He was awful and later gets benched. And then I said it's time for the Titans to move on from Marcus Mariota, and that was pretty 50-50. I will say Titans fans, I know there's some good Titans fans out there, smart football fans, but I don't know if there's a higher ratio of just kind of like dicks. There's just a lot of mean Titans fans. I've been dealing with it for 3 years. Almost not allowing you to have an opinion on Marcus Mariota, and it's always excuses with Mariota. It's always, oh, he's got another offensive coordinator this year. Oh, his offensive line sucks. Oh, he doesn't have any receivers. It's just all these excuses. It's they drafted him Corey Davis. They signed Adam Humphries. They drafted A.J. Brown. They have an elite tight end in Delaney Walker. You do have 2 franchise tackles. Granted, one of them is suspended right now. They drafted you Derrick Henry. I see it the other way with the offensive coordinators. I don't see it as, obviously LaFleur got a head coach offer, so that is an exception here. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are the offensive coordinators bad, just straight up, or are they bad because they don't know how to call plays when you have a quarterback that stares at his first read forever, has no idea how to sense pressure, plays with just no guts? I'm out. I'm so far out on Mariota. I would explore Ryan Tannehill at this point. He's a low end starter, really good backup type, pretty much exactly like Ryan Tannehill. But man, I just think it's time in Tennessee, and that game was just another example of it. I'm also out on just running backs that can't catch. I was out on Jordan Howard, and I'm out on Hunter Henry, and I'm out on Leonard Fournette. Especially Leonard Fournette, but I mean, both these guys, they're just plotters. I think you're wasting the opportunity to pass the ball when you hand the ball off to one of these guys. They don't even have all that much explosion. Like, Fournette had the big run at the end of that game, but that was an outlier. If you take that carry out, I mean, he was miserable. He had like negative yards, I think, before that rush on 12 carries. So he's just awful. For my Madden roster, his speed's coming down this week for sure. And then Hunter Henry, it's like, what does he do particularly well? That's my question. For a guy that's 6'3", 250 pounds, he's not going to be super explosive. He doesn't catch the ball well. Maybe he blocks well. I don't even honestly know how good his pass blocking is, but that's very low on the list of the priorities for a running back. And for a guy that's that big, he goes down on first contact way too much, and he doesn't explode through the hole. So I'm out on those running backs. I'm out on Mariota. Kind of in on Gardner Minshew. I mean, 6th round pick. I went back and looked at my notes on him. Basically said, good, smart decision maker, accurate in the short to intermediate game. Maybe not the best arm, the best deep ball thrower. I liked his kind of swagger and energy. I did have a draftable grade on him, but he's played great. What I tweeted about is he kind of looks like what I thought Baker Mayfield was before I kind of noticed how good Baker Mayfield's arm truly was. I was late to the party on that. But, he's a good player. I think there is a very good chance he's a better player than Nick Foles, just straight up already as a rookie. More mobile, to me, a better decision maker. Foles, 9 times out of 10 will make the right read, but on that 10th play, it's not just like he didn't pull the trigger. It's like he forces stuff. And so far, Minshew hasn't really done that. Just 2 games, obviously, but that's a big thing with Foles for me is, they call him Big D Nick, and he likes to leave it all on the field when he plays. He will take some chances, and when you don't have the arm of a Patrick Mahomes, it's going to bite you in the ass a lot. So it's going to be interesting. Minshew's got a big opportunity here. He's going to get like at least 6 more starts before Foles is even healthy. But he's going to have to play really well because they have a lot of money tied in Nick Foles. So if they think it's a 50-50, like a coin toss, if Minshew plays kind of like Foles, some weeks he's a starting caliber, some weeks he looks like a backup, they're going to go back to Foles because they have all that money invested in him. But it is already looking like a disastrous investment in Nick Foles. Just their 3rd worst investment in the quarterback in a row, going back to who was the Missouri guy? I can't even think of his name right now. Gabbert, and then Blake Bortles. Like, they just can't evaluate the quarterback position unless, apparently, if it's a 6th round pick like Gardner Minshew, or a 5th round, whenever they got him. Carolina at Arizona. Kyle Allen stole the show. Allen can throw the ball, man. He's got some zip. Clearly a better thrower of the football than Cam Newton right now. I think that they're covering up a lot of stuff with Cam Newton at the moment. If Kyle Allen plays like this, Cam Newton's not getting his job back. That much is very clear. This team was energized. You had DJ Moore actually being able to use down the field as a vertical threat. Also, not Debo, Curtis Samuel. Like, these receivers love having a quarterback that can actually get them the ball on time. It was a just absolute change of pace for this offense. Now, if Cam can get healthy, he's still probably the better player, and we'll see if that was just Arizona having terrible defense. Kyle Allen, kind of like we said with Daniel Jones, some of those plays, poor pocket sense, some fumbles, or risk of fumbles rather, like, he probably still just a backup quarterback, but man, he looked good. I had no idea that he had that good of an arm. I think he's a smaller guy. I can't confirm that, but I think he's like 6 feet. But man, he looked good. And then for Kyler, really slowed down in the fourth quarter of this game, which was pretty unfortunate. It's pretty rare for a rookie to come out and look good for 4 quarters. But Kyler, for the first 3 quarters of this game, was awesome. Getting rid of the ball quickly, as he does have to with that offensive line. And I was getting ready to tweet or put in my notes that he might already be one of the 5 most accurate throwers of the football in this league. I'm not going to put my foot down on that one, but I think there's a chance. He just throws a beautiful football, tons of anticipation at all 3 levels of the defense. He's still learning, though. He made a lot of mistakes as the game went on and looked a little slower in terms of his processor. He's not working with a whole lot. The Cardinals suck. Their defense is terrible. They have talent, but they just have no physicality. It was a team that already played soft last year, and Vance Joseph just is so uninspiring. He has not been able to get anything out of a lot of talented players. I have a really hard time seeing him not just sticking around for next year, but even lasting the season. But if you're Arizona, you've got Kyler looking awesome. He has been every bit as good as advertised. It's just so fun to watch. If he can get some talent next year, look out. He is going to compete in the NFC West probably about 2 years from now. But he's just fun to watch. He throws great football. Clean release. Love him. Okay, Denver at Green Bay. Pretty boring game. More takeaways on the Green Bay side than Denver. The only thing with Denver, we knew their offense wasn't going to be very good, but where's the defense? Where's the pass rush? This was supposed to be the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. It's nowhere to be found. Bradley Chubb, the PFF grade was down, and a lot of Broncos fans were like, how is he not grayed out like a top 10 pass rusher? He had 13 sacks or whatever, and it's he had a lot of potential to grade out better this year, and I kind of said, he might not have as many sacks, but he might be a better pass rusher, more pressures, better pressure rate. But he's just not looking very good this year. He's been just worked by, he had Bakhtiari this week, but the young guy for Oakland, and last week the Bears just neutralized the hell out of him. Vaughn has done nothing. This interior is just awful at getting after the quarterback, and they lost. What's his name? The guy that's been there forever, Wolf. Denver's done. They're done. I'm writing them off. The offense is not good enough to play if this team doesn't have an elite defense, and as of right now, it's not looking like an elite defense. For Green Bay, Rodgers looked awesome, man. I tweeted out another Rodgers throw this week, and I'm not going to belabor this. I think people are just kind of forgetting about what Rodgers can do and how Mahomes is doing all these amazing things, but you look back to 2011, 2012, Rodgers was doing all of this stuff with the insane efficiency, the 50 touchdown seasons, just ridiculous throws every game. But Rodgers was doing it without the picks, the fumbles, the bad mistakes. I will stand on a hill and scream that Patrick Mahomes is not as good as peak Aaron Rodgers yet. He could absolutely get there, but he's got to limit those mistakes. But anyway, Rodgers now, he's much closer to a game manager, especially as they've played some really good defenses this year. For the first time in his career, he can just kind of relax and not have to put the team on his back, and I honestly think he's enjoying the hell out of that. But it doesn't mean he can't still make big-time throws. He had 4 or 5 throws in this game, and a vintage one. This was the one I tweeted. He draws the defense offside, 50 yards off his back foot, hits Valdez-Scantling on just a beautiful deep ball for the first score of the game. I think we're going to see, as they play worse defenses and as he gets more familiar with this scheme, even this week, they were really getting that play action going. And, I think Aaron Rodgers off of play action on kind of those play fakes where he just gets all day to just kind of sit back there and survey the defense because, Rodgers isn't a rhythm player. He never really has been. He's not going to be Tom Brady and get rid of the ball right away and, slice and dice you. He wants to survey. He might need an extra second of protection to make the right read, but man, he can still make throws that only one other player in the world can make, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Now, Rodgers is kind of the opposite of Mahomes at this point, where he is almost too conservative, And the last thing I have about Green Bay's offense here that kind of relates to that is how bad their receivers are and have been for, I'll just say the last 2 weeks, because Chicago's defense is just on another level. But Green Bay's receivers did not make any plays last week. Obviously, Devontae Adams is great, but you need more than one good weapon. Receivers with drops and a lack of contested balls and separation against the Vikings. Same story this week. Just, these receivers it's hard to keep track. Geronimo Allison is bad. He's not a starting caliber player. He doesn't get open. He has drop issues, run after the catch. Not only does he not create yards after the catch, it feels like he's a risk to fumble at any point. Ball security, a major issue with him. The fact that they continue to roll him out there is a major, major concern if you are pulling for Green Bay to be any sort of legit Super Bowl team this year. And then also, Marquez Valdes-Scantling has really nice traits, clearly has shown the ability to get open on play action and be a good deep threat. That's fine in a Ted Ginn kind of way, like as that third option that you scheme open and you give him 2 or 3 targets a game that really change the landscape of the game. But as your number 2 receiver, when you're trying to throw a contested 6-yard out, he can't catch the ball through traffic at all. They have no tight end force at all right now. Jimmy Graham's hurt again. I don't understand why they haven't addressed this receiver situation, but it's going to end up costing this team in the end. I think Green Bay has a lot of bright days ahead with how good this defense looks. Another note I have here is Jair Alexander is one of the best defensive players in the league through 3 weeks. Field Yates agreed with me on that. He actually tweeted that. But he's been dominant. Absolutely dominant. You could make a pretty strong case that he, through 3 weeks this season, is the best cornerback in the NFL. Blake Martinez still stinks. I'm actually going to have a cut-up this week of just plays from just last week of why I believe that. That maybe Thursday, maybe Wednesday, we'll see. But yeah, man, Green Bay, they fixed a lot of issues with the edge and the secondary, but they put a lot of resources into fixing those, and receiver and linebacker still ignored, still going to be a liability for this team. But they're 3-0. Can't really complain. They're one of the better teams in the NFC right now. So let's keep moving. We're at the midway point in terms of the hour mark. Oakland at Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota was Minnesota. I think I've been a little bit higher on the Vikings this year. Their run game has been utterly impressive. Their defense looks back closer to what it was a couple years ago. Like they're going to be a contender in the NFC, not just in the North, but in the NFC in general. I've been asking for this for weeks now, going back to the preseason. Can we please stop kidding ourselves with the Oakland Raiders? It was again this week. I made fun of this in the preseason where they were talking about how we signed the best receiver in the NFL. Fair. Antonio Brown, probably the best receiver in the NFL when he's on the field. But besides that, it's like, they had this amazing draft. Jonathan Abrams, the steal of the draft. Like Cleveland Ferrell, elite pass rusher. By the way, you couldn't find him with a pair of binoculars out there on Sunday. Also, freaking, Tyrell Williams getting hyped up. We signed the best tackle in the NFL with Trent Brown. The hype was off the rails. I don't know if it was just hard knocks or whatever, but this was the worst team in the NFL last year. Yeah, they won a couple games late in the year that ended up hurting them. But by the eye test, the Raiders were the worst team in the NFL last year. They're slightly improved this year. But in the preseason, in the pregame, you hear the announcers saying, this Raiders team is legit now. Like, they no longer have to run gimmicks on offense. They can line up and punch you in the mouth and score points. In what world? What have we seen other than them beating Denver in the Monday night opener that makes us think that the Oakland Raiders are anything other than a bottom 5, cellar dweller? So can we just stop with the Raiders? Bengals at the Bills. Not a ton of takeaways here. Buffalo, no big surprises here. That's kind of what they are, is Josh Allen kind of running around, making some big plays, running the ball when they can, playing good defense, especially at home. They're 3-0. They don't have any particularly impressive wins. They've just kind of looked like the version of this team that had potential to emerge as a wild card contender. Good defense. Allen's played pretty good. Has not made a ton of boneheaded mistakes. Throwing pretty good football. Like, just things are going pretty well in Buffalo. We're gonna have to see how they compete against real competition. Like, they've played the two New York teams and now the Bengals. Now this week they will. Let's see, who do they play this week? My app's being a little slow here. Week 4. All right, they got the Patriots at home this week. So how about that for a test? They're laying 7 points to the Patriots. So, hey, I'm not going to say they can't win that game. A little unlikely, but we'll have some stronger opinions on Buffalo next week. As for the Bengals, it's just rough. A lot of injuries, new coach, no offensive line, a quarterback that's actually playing pretty well, but Dalton never a guy that's going to like put the team on his back and just like, let the team freeload their way to wins. Last note here is Dawson Knox for the Bills got the start here, a rookie tight end out of Ole Miss. Beast. Speed, power, can block. Underutilized at Ole Miss because they had Brown, they had DK Metcalf. But, man, he can play. And he got the start here because of injury, but he's looking like they got a good mid-round pick there. Jacksonville took a tight end in the early third round that just blew my mind that they decided that he was better than Dawson Knox. Well, forget it. He out of like San Jose State, just totally a bad pick. Knox looks like a player. All right, Detroit at Philadelphia. Everyone's kind of wondering, are the Eagles a legit team? Are they? Can we write them off for the Super Bowl? I mean, hell, I said this was going to happen in my predictions video, that they have a rough start to their schedule. Granted, I didn't see them losing to Detroit at home, but, pump the brakes here a little bit. They're 1-2. Eagles are going to be fine. I think this was more about Detroit. Like, at what point do we give Detroit some credit? They beat the Chargers last week. They, kind of blew it in Arizona. Fine, but that's still a road tie. You're not going to knock a team for tying on the road, even if it is Arizona. And then they go into Philly and win. Like, they're a solid team. Their ceiling might be a little lower, but we know that Matthew Stafford can play. They have a disciplined defense. They got a fan base that's kind of buying in. They got some playmakers. They got Galladay. They got Kerryon Johnson. They got an offensive line that's not bad. Like, they're just a very legitimate football team. I got a lot of flack for ranking them above the Ravens in my power rankings. Since the season started, they've been higher. And, yeah, I think Detroit is a better football team than the Baltimore Ravens. I really do. I think their defense is actually better. And I think their offense is better. Clearly a better quarterback. They got better playmakers, better offensive line, more of an identity. So, Philly had a ton of drops in this game. They should have won, and they didn't. It happens. It was 1 week for Philly that happened to follow up another bad week last week with a ton of injuries. And they got to go to Green Bay this week. So I had said in my predictions video when I picked the Eagles to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl that if they start 1-4, 2-5, I don't want to hear it. Because they're the kind of team that can turn it around because they have all this talent. Give them a little time. They could very well go into Lambeau and win this week. They just kind of spiraling at the moment, but this is a little bit of what this team does. Is a little bit back and forth. Jets at New England. No comment. I mean, Patriots fans, if you want me to applaud you for beating the Jets, find another podcast. The Jets, just a mess right now. When they get Darnold back, they'll be interesting, but right now, just a train wreck. Miami at Dallas. Again, not really any notes on Dallas' side of the ball. I do think Tony Pollard is almost a mirror image of Austin Eckler right now, and it's ironic because Melvin Gordon and Zeke have been held very closely for me in terms of who I think is better and what style they are. I think if you just put them in each other's jerseys, you wouldn't be able to see much of a difference between Zeke and Melvin Gordon. And then Pollard, kind of that guy regarded as a receiving back, but can do a little bit as a runner too. So I do think Tony Pollard, they found a guy there. I've been saying for a couple years that they need someone that can spell Zeke in a game like this where they're killing another team or they're expected to win big and they don't want to, you're paying Zeke $90 million now. Like, you can't run that player into the ground. So you need someone that can not just relieve the carries, but play at a pretty high level. And running backs are pretty easy to find, and they found one. As for Miami, they tried their best. Rosen actually played pretty well in this game, all things considered. Preston Williams, again, kind of their best player on offense right now. Now, frickin' Kenyon Drake, who I've never been a Kenyon Drake guy, and Dolphins fans, I think ever since Tannehill left, have turned their heads towards me hating on Kenyon Drake to say that I hate the Dolphins. Anyway, he fumbles. This team had a chance to go up at half, and Kenyon Drake fumbled on the 5-yard line on Dallas's 5. So, rip any team trading for Kenyon Drake, which was in the works this week. Not a big Kenyon Drake fan at all. So, let's move on. Houston at the Chargers. Honestly, not a lot of takeaways in this game. The Chargers are just kind of an average football team right now. They don't have those playmakers across the board right now with Gordon and Henry. Keenan Allen is ridiculous. Mike Williams on and off, a little streaky, but they don't have an offensive line. Their defense right now is just okay. They got some holes in that defense. They're working out some things in that secondary because I can't remember who's starting at number 2 corner right now, but they've lost a lot of guys in that secondary. So the Chargers are just kind of an average football team. They, like we've been saying, are in survival mode until they can get some of these guys back healthy. I think Hunter Henry will be back in the second half of the year. You've got Melvin Gordon, should be back around week 10. I don't know how much that's actually going to change things because Austin Eckler is a stud. Derwin James should be back late in the year. If they can get in, they can beat anyone. But right now, just too many injuries. Also, Russell Okung, the left tackle, got to get him back healthy. For a team in survival mode, though, they've now lost 2 close games. They kind of blew this one against Houston, and they blew it against Detroit last week. So not looking too good there for the Chargers. Not going to write them off, but got to start winning some of these close games. As for Houston, it's really hard to evaluate Deshaun Watson. He's not the sharpest player. He doesn't always get rid of the ball on time. A great improviser, obviously. I've applauded his arm talent. He's got a much better arm than give him credit for. He did have just an absolute boneheaded throw in the third or the fourth quarter of this game. I don't think it ended up getting picked, but it was just what are you doing? He literally just chucked it up into triple coverage. And that's the kind of thing that's just very concerning for an improvising type of quarterback. The Texans they're 2-1. They've come away with some scrappy wins right now. I just don't have a ton of takeaways on that team. They're probably going to win the South because it's a crappy division, but I just don't see that team as a polished organization that can go in and win playoff games, especially because they'll probably have to go on the road for at least one. Pittsburgh at San Francisco. God, talk about not being polished. What is going on in San Francisco? Can Kyle Shanahan get these guys to get their act together? They have, 5-6 turnovers in this game? And it's sloppy stuff. It's fumbles. I tweeted one out that they were running one of those pre-snap jet sweep things that tries to kind of confuse the defense. And Jimmy just snapped the ball, or the center snapped. I don't know whose fault it was. Literally right in the moment where the guy was crossing behind the center. So it hit, number 13 for them. Anyway, it hit the receiver just in the ass, and they fumbled it and lost it for their 5th turnover of the game. And it was in the Steelers' territory, in the red zone. In the fourth quarter, they were going to pull away. And, God, this is at least the second week. They just steamrolled the Bengals, but they weren't exactly, polished. There's so much upside for this team, but they have got to clean this stuff up. It's very reminiscent, honestly, of the Chargers of a couple of years ago, where they would go 9-7, but lose 2 or 3 games a year on just BS, where they just shot themselves in the foot. And also injuries are similar to that team as well. So that kind of is a cross comparison. I do like the Niners, though. I think they have a ton of upside this year in an NFC that's kind of opening up right now. The other note is the Niners. I kind of talked about this earlier with Jake Fromm, but I charted this game for PFF, and they run so much I formation. I'm not even going to say it's like a bad thing. Like, they do it really well, and their run game is top notch right now. And they use the fullback better than anyone else. Like, yes, George Kittle is a stud, and he's their best player, probably on the entire team, honestly. But they run their offense through Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback. He played wide receiver in this game, outside and slot. He played legit tight end. He lined up at running back, fullback. Like, they do so much with him. He's an awesome blocker. Like, they run so many good power runs. And then all this stuff sets up the play action so well. Because they come out in I formation, at least in this game, it was like 60% of the time. And you would think against a Steelers team that's built up front that that's not going to work. But it did. And they got those shot plays to work. So it's a very unique looking offense. It's right there with Baltimore and some of these other kind of weird offenses right now for just different looking units. And then also the left tackle that stepped in for Staley, I think it's like School. He actually played all right in this game. You didn't really notice him, which is usually a good thing. And then on the Pittsburgh side, like, I think the Minka trade was done after the podcast last week, so I guess I haven't really reacted to that on the podcast. Like, just an awful trade. So awful. Lots of awful trades the last couple of years. Like, he played great in this game, Minka did. He had a pick, he had a forced fumble, but Mason Rudolph was kind of uninspiring in this game. He's fine. He looked like any backup quarterback I would expect to look with this group of receivers and offensive line and stability that the Steelers team has. But the Steelers are not going to win any more than 5 games this year. I think that's optimistic. So, like, you just gave away a top 6 or 7 pick for a free safety who's kind of unproven at this point. Really nice player, but this is a team that's legitimately going to need to draft a franchise quarterback at some point. They seem to think it's Mason Rudolph. Not off to a great start on that take for them. I don't know, man. I think that was awful. And I like Minka Fitzpatrick as a player. I think people think I don't like him because I always say how he's not a free safety. And I don't even necessarily think he can't play free safety. That was more just directed at Dolphins fans who literally claimed that he was had historically played free safety. And you look at his snap count, and up until week 2 before he got traded, he hadn't really played like any snaps at free safety. So that's why I get so angry when I talk about Minka Fitzpatrick. But it really isn't much of a reflection of him. He hadn't played great to this point, but I at no point said that he can't be a great player. I think he can. But that trade is we're going to look back on that as just like, what the hell were they thinking as the Dolphins have 2 picks in the top 6 next year? All right, just a couple games left here. Then we should have about 10 minutes for the mailbag. Atlanta at Indianapolis. I was critical of Matt Ryan on Twitter, and I'll be completely honest with you guys, as I always am. I have not watched this game yet. That's the downside of trying to record this on Monday, is I just, timing-wise, can't get through every single game. This just was kind of put towards the back. I will watch it before the weekend, but by all accounts, Matt Ryan didn't play all that bad in this game. They lost for other reasons, but it just is another example of Matt Ryan not doing enough on the road. 3 points in the first half. You see the Twitter clip of him literally not seeing Julio Jones, of all people, coming wide open in the red zone. My criticisms of Matt Ryan are never what he does do, unless it's a terrible mistake, because he does make more bad mistakes than you would expect for a pocket passing type of player. It's more often for what he doesn't do, the coulda, shoulda, woulda plays. Like, okay, that's great. You threw the slant on 2nd and 12, and now it's 3rd and 4, but it's, what did you not do on 3rd and 4 when you ended up throwing the ball out of bounds or taking a sack? That's Matt Ryan just comes up short, and he cannot win on the road. And this was another example of that. Indianapolis played good. Jacoby Brissett good again this week, continuing to kind of look more and more like a guy that can be their starter next year. So, they're going to compete in that division with the Texans. That's pretty much it. I don't think the Jags or the Titans are going to make much of a run there. Maybe they prove me wrong, but really between Indy and Houston right now. All right, Seattle at New Orleans, probably my best game call of the week. I will quickly plug that. Remember, guys, you can get all of my weekly picks on my Patreon. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. I upload my weekly picks every week there. So I actually picked New Orleans to win this game as a 5-point underdog. Pretty much no one was picking that to happen with a backup quarterback coming in here. Seattle 2-0 at home. Pretty much a lucky call by me. I mean, they had a punt return touchdown and a scoop and score. You take those away, Seattle probably wins. Russell played pretty good in this game. He played off script a lot, but made a lot of plays happen. I think both these teams are going to be fine. New Orleans, kind of like we said last week, I don't know if that was on the podcast or what, but, they have to win a few of these games here, and you got to win them just like they did here. So they're going to get Drew Brees back eventually. When they get Drew Brees, they are a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. To get this win in Seattle, you really can't undersell how big that is for this team. So good for New Orleans. I think they play Dallas this week. That's going to be another tough one. And then it loosens up. They got some much easier games. So I don't know if they'll beat Dallas, but to get at least one of the at Seattle and Dallas wins is huge for this team, who's just, again, like the Chargers, in survival mode. The Seahawks, to me, was not a huge surprise to see them lose this game. While the Seahawks offense is fun to watch, Russell Wilson's amazing, they just have inconsistencies. There's really no other way to say it. I love Russell Wilson, and I hate being critical of him, but I'm going to be critical of any quarterback, any offense that has problems. And this offense, it's just not all put together. They try to run the ball too much. Russell, if he has a criticism, it's that he is an off-rhythm player. He's not going to take the easy stuff. He wants to make big plays, and I'm all for that. But it is going to lead to some inconsistencies. So not a huge surprise to see them lose this game against a really good Saints pass rush, but they will be fine. All right, last game, Rams at Cleveland. The Rams are just kind of quietly 3-0. To be honest, they got really lucky week 2. With the bad scoop and score, and then Drew Brees getting hurt like sequentially. Just get rid of the sub, just sequentially. But yeah, man, the Rams are just kind of hanging on. They're kind of a machine. Gurley, okay. People are gonna say this is, a version of Todd Gurley that's not elite, that the knee, whatever. Like, I don't think Gurley looks all that different from Gurley in the past. I've never really thought Gurley was this all-time great running back. Like, I think a lot of people, he's very good. But the Rams are just kind of hanging on. They got Aaron Donald just wrecking stuff. The offense makes some plays. Goff is just okay. They just play good, fundamental, sound football, all sides of the ball. And they went into a Browns team that couldn't hang with that. Baker did not play well. I will talk about Baker here. When I did my Browns deep dive, I said that I expected times where he's going to show some regression, because he did have the best pass blocking offensive line in the NFL last year. He just did. Like, you're going to look a little different, whoever you are, when you have the best pass blocking line one year going to the next year. You don't repeat that. Injuries happen. Players randomly regress. Like, it just doesn't happen. The play calling was really good last year. I don't know what the hell a draw on 4th and 9 was. To me, that's a fireable offense. That's right there with, like, there's 2 decisions last year that I thought were fireable offenses when Jason Garrett punted in overtime on, like, 4th and 1 with a healthy Zeke Elliott, and then when Mike McCarthy gave the ball back to Russell Wilson and thought that his defense was going to get a stop in a primetime game in Seattle last year. Those were 2 of the worst coaching decisions of the year last year. Now, ironically, McCarthy did get fired, but, I mean, God, a draw on 4th and 9 in the fourth quarter? Like, and if you're going to go for it on the 40-yard line, and it's 4th and 9, that's already a ballsy call. But to just hand it to the running back and hope that he can pick it up, oh my, that was worse than those other two decisions we talked about. But besides potentially some bad play calling, I mean, everyone that's not Kansas City, New Orleans, New England, that's pretty much it. I mean, I guess the Rams, but 27, 28 teams will always go, when their offense is struggling, immediately, oh, the play calling sucked. Oh, the offensive coordinator's got to go. The offensive coordinator is the scapegoat in about 9 out of 10 situations. Sometimes the quarterback is just so visibly bad that you can point to that. But more often than not, you're going to see fans accusing the offensive coordinator. There might be some, like there usually is, some warranted criticism of play calling. But at some point, the quarterback, you can't always have Josh McDaniels. You can't always have Andy Reid calling amazing plays that get guys open on third down. Sometimes the quarterback's just got to make something happen. And Baker, not only is he too aggressive and throwing a lot more interceptions this year on those short to intermediate throws, he just is not handling, or he's just getting pressured more. He just has not been as good this year. I expected some regression, but I will say he's looking a lot more like the quarterback that I thought was a terrible pick. Now, I've come back the other way and said the Browns killed it. I was wrong on Baker. I missed on his arm strength. He's got a great arm. I think he'll be okay. But I just want to point out that for the guy that was supposed to be a golden boy this year, he's not exactly taking the bulls by the horn here. He's kind of fallen off, honestly, to a concerning degree. And he's got Odell Beckham now. Like, the offensive line's been worse, but it's not worse than what most quarterbacks in the league deal with. So, you definitely got concerns there in Cleveland. They're off to a really bad start. This is a game, I picked Cleveland to win this game. And I don't know, man. They just got problems. They got a lot of problems. That defense is just kind of eh. They got Myles Garrett and pretty much no one else. I think the Sheldon Richardson signing was a little overrated. Now, they didn't have Ward in this game, who's their second best defender, but, man, just rough start for the Browns, who were like 14-1 to win the Super Bowl to start the year. That was just ridiculous. But I thought they'd be better than this, and maybe they still will. They still got a lot of talent, but issues. Like I said in that Browns deep dive, I like this team. They still got to overcome being the Cleveland Browns. And there was like 5 or 6 comments in that video that was like, you can't just say, oh, they're the Browns, so they won't be good. Well, only the Cleveland Browns would want to run a draw on frickin' 4th and 9. Like, they still got to overcome being the Cleveland Browns. Coaching, culture, it's a thing. And the Browns have a lot to prove. Okay, we're at about an hour. I'm going to do like 5 to 7 mailbag questions here. I'm going to just go to my Instagram first because that's where I ask you guys to send those mailbag questions. It just makes everything easier to sort through them. So I did get a couple 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not going to do those because they're a little outdated. So, sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. This is a question about the NFL from Greg Grom changing to a lottery draft to lessen the incentive to tank a season. I've always said I don't think the NFL needs it. There's only 16 games. Tanking is just a lot less rare. Like, yes, the Dolphins are doing it right now. The Browns kind of did it, but they were just going to be that bad anyway, I think. The thing with the NFL, the NBA, is if you're not a contender, literally 8 teams will legitimately tank because getting that first overall pick will change the scope of your franchise. More often than not. There's still busts, but, I mean, you're looking at guys like Karl Anthony Towns, like Anthony Davis. Usually the number 1 overall pick is a legitimate superstar player that is going to change the scope of your organization, especially because in basketball, there's only 5 guys on the court. One player means a lot. In the NFL, obviously quarterback has a big degree, but even that, like, your hit rate on that quarterback is far from a guarantee compared to a guy like who we just mentioned. In basketball, it's very clear. You can usually tell, like, all right, he's athletic, his jump shot's pretty good, he sees the court well, he doesn't make a bunch of dumb mistakes. Like, all right, yeah, he's going to be a stud. Now, occasionally you get like an Andrew Wiggins who gets to the NFL and just, sees the sight of a gym and runs away. But for the most part, you kind of know. And even Wiggins couldn't really shoot in college. So, yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I think if you want to be the Dolphins and you want to just absolutely suck and take that risk that not only you're going to get the number 1 overall pick, but that you're going to hit on it, then good luck. The other thing in football is you can get star players in the 2nd, 3rd, 5th round if you draft well. So there's a lot more risk to tanking in the NFL than in the NBA. So I really don't think it's necessary. I think it's just fine how it is. This one's from Jurian Ryder. We get a lot of questions, good questions from him. Jerry Tillery was wildly hyped by PFF coming into the draft. You weren't so high on him. He's been struggling so far this season. Why were you right while your coworkers at PFF were wrong? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not always perfect, though. I hated Baker, and PFF loved Baker. At the end of the day, PFF is awesome. I literally can't say a bad word about them, but I do think that at the end of the day, you got to watch the film. You got to still form your own opinions. There's things that don't show up in a PFF grade. Jerry Tillery specifically, I honestly never fully understood why PFF loved him so much. Good player, good athlete, but I always saw him when I watched his tape as more of a developmental player, good bull rush. But, I thought he was a guy that didn't defend the run particularly well, that his technique had a long way to go. And it's not that I didn't like him. I understood the pick when they made it. I had him as a high 2nd. So, I don't think that he's necessarily surprised me that he hasn't played well to this point, because I did think he was a little more developmental. But yeah, I don't have a good answer. Sometimes just what I see when I watch the film doesn't match up with what the PFF grades and what my coworkers are saying. Sometimes it does. And when it does, that's when I really like to go in on a guy. But I still will watch the tape. I'm not just going to be blind to the grade. And I think that's what most good scouts in the NFL do. All right, I'm trying to get back to my freaking direct messages. I don't use Instagram a lot. Okay. Yeah, this one's from Pat Figueroa. This isn't even a question, but I think it's funny. It reinforces what I've said about the Raiders' hype. He said, so far in the Raiders game, the commentators have called Jonathan Abram one of the best young safeties in the league, and Derek Carr one of the most athletic players in the NFL. Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. Like, can we just stop with the Raiders? They suck. Like, open your eyes, people. All right, one more from Jacob Corder here on Instagram. If Gardner Minshew continues to grow as a quarterback, what should they do with Nick Foles going into 2020? That's a great question. That's why you don't give Nick Foles a huge contract just to sell all your team on having a franchise quarterback. He is already, we're having a conversation of, is Gardner Minshew, a 6th-round pick, better than Nick Foles? Like, what does that tell you? Like I said, Minshew is going to have to be awesome. He's going to have to play like he did last week the rest of the year for them to even consider not going back to Nick Foles, because they have so much money tied to him. Even if they trade him, even if they cut him, they are going to be paying Nick Foles for the next 3 years. That's why I was so against that contract. Like, if you do that, he's got to be the last piece. You got to make sure that, like, okay, if he comes in, plays at a high level, we can win a Super Bowl. Did anyone think that Nick Foles was going to come in there and win him a Super Bowl? I don't think so. And I definitely don't think the players in that locker room thought that. What do you do? So what do you do? Say Minshew wins that job out. You try to trade him. you try to see what you can do with that guaranteed money. You know, I'm not a huge understander of how the cap works. You know, the Texans were able to get away from the Osweiler money by trading him, and they gave up a second-round pick to have the Browns just take him. Maybe you do that. Can you get a team like Miami to take him? Like, just, hey, please, just take him. We'll give you a third-round pick. Maybe. Keep in mind, the Jaguars front office has been incapable of evaluating the quarterback situation. Yes, they took Gardner Minshew. It was lucky. Like, yeah, they may have had him a little higher than, I don't know, who else fell? You had, like, man, it's hard to think back on this, but, like, Tyree Jackson, who is some of the other guys, like Easton Stick, like some of those, you know, once you get into that 8 to 15 range, you're guessing. If Gardner Minshew's good, it's not because of good scouting. They got lucky. Yeah, they might have had him higher than another guy that wouldn't have been as good. That's fine. But when it comes to finding franchise quarterbacks, they didn't take Gardner Minshew in the 5th round because they thought he was going to be their franchise quarterback. They liked what they saw. They thought he could be a good backup. He's even proved them wrong on that. So keep in mind, the Jaguars cannot evaluate the quarterback position. They drafted Blaine Gabbert. They drafted Blake Bortles and then extended him. They thought that Nick Foles was this savior. Most teams in the league know that Nick Foles is a backup quarterback. They're not going to trade you a pick to take that contract. They would rather roll the dice with their own version of Gardner Minshew or find an actual starting caliber guy. Maybe it's Mariota. Maybe it's Tannehill. Maybe Cam Newton becomes available. But it's not going to be Nick Foles for any other team. The Jags were the only team that were interested in him. The only reason they paid him is because they wanted to sell their team and their fans on him being their franchise. That's the only reason he got that contract. It's inexplainable. One of the weirdest things. But they're SOL. Honestly. All right. Let's go to Twitter. And someone just messaged me, get that money. Did a defensive touchdown just get scored? Because I had called that. Let's see. Ha Clinton Dix, pick 6. Boom. Another good call by TFG. Just saying. All right, get those picks on Patreon. Called it on there. Hope you took that bet if you were listening to the video. All right. Let's go to Twitter because I have some more mailbag questions on there. Let's see. We're a minute 07. Let's go another 8 minutes here, and we'll close out. All right. Okay, sorry if I missed your question. Again, if you want to guarantee I answer your question, mailbag. Instagram. DMs, open. Whitman_Marcus. All right, does Stephon Diggs' limited role in our offense now make him somewhat expendable? I don't know about limited role. I mean, they have blown out 2 of their 3 teams at home. Like, he wasn't limited in his role in a meaningful game against the Packers. You just paid him money. I don't think Diggs is going anywhere. A crush. Who's the top 5 sexiest quarterbacks? I like this question. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo, for sure. Probably number 1. We'll go Andy Dalton. Good looking redhead. Gardner Minshew, pretty sexy. Baker, he looks like me, so I'll say Baker because everyone says he looks like me. I'm pretty sexy. And then, I had one in mind. I mean, Tom Brady's kind of a good-looking dude. NFL champs this season. I said Chiefs preseason. I'll just stand by it for now. It's Chiefs. Patriots are kind of in their own tier right now. The Patriots may be a tier above the Chiefs. I don't know. That's the way it was looking when they had Antonio Brown, but without him. Maybe a little more human. Is Buffalo's performance living up to their record currently? Yeah. I mean, Buffalo really hasn't surprised me. They've beaten the teams that they should with good defense and some plays by Josh Allen. Not really surprised on Buffalo so far. What do I think of the Texans' run game? They have been running the ball pretty well, but they also were playing the Chargers this week, who are possibly the worst run defense in the league. No thanks to Jerry Tillery, by the way. He's not playing well. Why is my guy Keenan Allen getting no love? Another more serious question. Am I really the only one that isn't nearly as high on Tua or Lawrence as everyone else? I just don't see it, I guess. Maybe Mahomes has raised the bar too high. Well, yeah, I've talked about Tua at Laborum. I don't see it with him. Lawrence, you can see the talent. Like, it's just there. Now, he's had a rough start. He's 20 years old. Like, it's the same thing we said about Sam Darnold. Like, think about yourself at that age. Like, you're not going to be perfect. He's going to have another, let's see, he's probably got 8-9 games this year and then another 13-14 games next year. Like, we're going to see 25 more games of Trevor Lawrence before he comes out as a true junior. So the talent's clearly there. He can run, make all the throws on the move. But yeah, he hasn't played great this year, so I understand some hesitation there. We're going to have a lot more time to evaluate Trevor Lawrence, and that's a big decision that the Dolphins are going to have to make. Is, do you take Jake Fromm if he plays well, or do you roll the dice and hope Lawrence is the guy that you hope for? All right, does Lamar's Week 3 performance prove what I thought coming into the year? No, I don't think so. I think I'm still impressed by Lamar Jackson's accuracy. And hell, if he plays poorly another 2 weeks, all of a sudden I'm going to be high on Lamar Jackson again. It's just kind of how NFL fan bases work. They think in extremes. I think he's proved me wrong with his accuracy. He hasn't been like Tom Brady or Phillip Rivers out there, but he's throwing good footballs. Still got other concerns about him, though. Can you talk about how great Jair Alexander and Darnell Savage have been for them and how impactful they are? Yeah, I mean, Green Bay, I give that front office a ton of crap, and I still think there's a lot of issues with that front office with Gutekunst. Like, why did they not bring in another wide receiver? Whether it's just a John Brown or just anyone. They just ignored it. And the linebacker position, Blake Martinez is a high school caliber linebacker starting in the NFL. I don't understand that, but my God, the decision to move down, pick up an extra first round, pass on Derwin James, by the way, and then turn those 2 picks into Jair Alexander, who we talked about earlier. You can make a very strong case, the best cornerback in the NFL right now through 3 weeks. He has been amazing. Lockdown coverage, possibly the best athlete at cornerback right now. I mean, hell, I talked about how his short area burst is comparable to Tyreek Hill. But he also ripped the ball out of a tight end's arms this week and tackled amazing. Best player on the Packers defense, certainly right now. And then Darnell Savage is a guy who kind of came out of nowhere late in the draft process. Now, after I kind of saw his name, saw his 4.36 workout at the Combine, you go and watch him, and he was the number 16 player on my board. He's a guy I do have money down on to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think Darnell Savage is an absolute stud, and he has been killing the game in coverage at free safety, where, in my opinion, Green Bay had the worst safety play of any team in the NFL last year. So the combination of Savage and Amos, like, awesome. And then also Preston Smith alone through the first 2 weeks had more pressures, 15 in 2 weeks, than Nick Perry did all of 2018. Nick Perry was Green Bay's highest paid edge rusher last season. So the improvements they've made to that defense, you really can't say enough. They're a completely new look team. But man, they look good on the defensive side of the ball. They're only going to get better offensively, but I do think that their receivers are an issue. And this question right here will be the last one. It ties perfectly into that. Should the Packers trade for A.J. Green? Hell yes, they should trade for A.J. Green. You give a second-round pick for A.J. Green, you become, in my opinion, A.J. Green on the Green Bay Packers makes the Packers the front runner in the NFC, and is a move that could get them close to the Chiefs and the Patriots as in terms of Super Bowl contenders. So we'll end it on some Packer talk there, but thanks again, guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button, but then also if you enjoy the podcast, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you do get those podcasts, and leave a review. And use that promo code Franchise Guy on SeatGeek. So let's go watch some football. Peace out, guys.